Hey everybody, Average Picker here. So we're coming into the home stretch on making our challenge lock, which means we have to cut our key. And we've got a few options available to us. I'm probably not going to show the entire key cutting method here, but we'll show enough to get you going. And I do not make a pretty key. My keys should be functional, but they're not. They look very homemade. Let's leave it at that. So two of my favorite bits on the Dremel for cutting keys are these discs. And this one especially I've used for a lot of different projects. And you can see it's kind of getting a little beveled off there, which has made it a little less ideal for key cutting. But this thing new is phenomenal. And so I've been using this one some and it works pretty well too. These are my two favorite Dremel wise, but you don't have to have them. You can also hand file. There's other ways to do it. You know, if you have a grinder or something, you can do it. But you can just hand file the keys, you know, with the files. I find using any one type to be a little detrimental. The triangular ones I think work a little better overall. Sometimes I have used the round one, gotten most of the depth cut, and then it kind of evened it out using some of these. You can also, though it will take you a very long time, but you can just use a jewelry file as well and just sit there and work it. Though this is for finer work and it is going to take a bit. But you've got a couple options there, and we'll maybe try a couple of them just so you can see the differences. You know, now we do need to mark our key off and things like that. But here's a little tip for you: when you're using one of these, don't chuck it down real deep into the Dremel. I mean, I'm not saying to go super shallow, but don't go all the way down with it. One of the reasons is you're going to be turning this key most likely as you're grinding, and you're going to be coming in a little bit on different directions, and you can see what's going to happen is you can end up, you know, just kind of bumping into, especially as that depth gets a little bit more, just into parts of the Dremel, and it's going to make holding it very awkward. So you know, when you chuck this thing, make sure you've got some room to actually operate with. All right. So we are going to approach this very similar to how we did our shear line. So we are going to take our marker and we're just going to color up the key. You can come down the sides and mark the key up as well, and you'll see why you might want to do that in just a moment. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to load our key up into the lock with no pins in it, and we can see down in there. And you can take anything, we're going to use the jewelry file in this case, but anything you can get down in there and score that magic marker with. And you could probably mark this with soot or anything else. I've tried some other weird methods, even using like tape and things. This is just, I would say, the split difference for me of the easiest and most lazy, without having to resort to other things, and I already usually have a marker laying around on the table. We want to make sure that we get the whole entire cylinder length or chamber length marked there, right? Because if we just come in and mark a dot, we're going to lose track of some, you know, how much space we have. So I'm going to try to look around the camera here and just get a score going. And you can see, we can see down into the sides of the key too, and that's what I'm saying. You know, sometimes like this will slip down as you're scoring it to those sides between the key. But that's fine. You know, if you mark the sides of the key, that just still gives you kind of a scoring reference area. So especially if you don't get the top very well, sometimes you can find the mark on the side. So try to do this around the camera here in a way that you can actually see the process. Again, all I'm doing is just jabbing down on it and trying to get some of that marker off. And then we take our key out You see we've got, getting a little bit of glare there off of my lamp, I know, but we've got some marks now, and we can see about where our pins are going to fall. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now that's not the greatest marking, and it's easy to lose while we're working, at least in this case. And I could load it back up and go back in and score it some more, or you can also come in with your file and just kind of hit those notches very, very lightly. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this on camera. Very, very lightly, but enough to just give them a little more definition. I'm actually going to do a little bit of this off camera because I can't really reach around the thing. Okay. Sorry about having to do that off camera, but it was just a little more awkward. And again, you're getting some glare, but you can see we've got a little more defined marking. And all I did was I came in, used the edge of the file, and just gave it a pass or two. Doesn't take very much. That just gives you a little bit of a groove for as you start to work and this stuff starts to wear a little bit. It helps define it some. So now we've got our blank loaded back up in there. You can see we're pretty good in there. We actually have more room to the right side on chamber 5 than what it kind of might appear to be on the key. We're looking pretty good. We're just going to load up our key pins now. And this is just so we get an idea of where they set. And we're going to be using this repeatedly to just keep checking the depth. But this will just give you a general idea. You can see we're going to have to work pin 3 the deepest, 2, 4, and barely do 5. Sometimes I like to start with the deepest one and get it going first, and then kind of start to hit all of them and take them all down kind of at the same time. I'm not sure how I'll do this one. What I may do is do 5 a little bit, get 4 down a little bit, then really get in and work 3. And that's just in case while I'm dremeling I slip with the Dremel a little bit. I'll have good marks for 4 and 5. And I'm going to try to stay away from this side of the key as much as possible until I work out if that's going to actually function for us or not. So let's get started. Okay, well, it looks like I did it again. I bumped the camera and accidentally turned it off when I was doing the cuts. But I will show you this. So we can get this here and match it up. And yeah, I've hit 5 and 4 pretty well. 3 still got to come down a little bit. We haven't touched 2 at all. I'll show you this. So the camera flattens this out a little bit. I don't know if you can really tell on 4 and 5. They actually stick up a bit more than you might want, except the easy set, the tolerances are so well. The tolerances are so sloppy that it passes right through there with no problems. It doesn't hang up, it doesn't snag, it doesn't do anything at all. And for what it looks like on camera, it's probably twice that in real life. So anyway, I will try not to turn the camera off. We will take 3 down and then we'll work on 2. Is incredibly awkward the way this is set up. Let's see if I can do this. It's hard for me to tell if I'm dropping out of frame or not. We have not taken enough off of 3, but just going to check it real quick. Yeah, it's getting there. Now I would normally start to do 2, but I'm going to hold off on 2 just so we can look at a couple other filings and how those kind of work, and then I will probably come back and do it with the Dremel just because it's quicker. Oh, that was a bad slip on my part. Let's check if that had any adverse effects. And I've got a sneaky suspicion. So 3 will just, you can see how 3 is sitting. 3 will just get in there barely. It will not hang up. It would be touching a hole at that point. I kind of love Easy Set, don't you? Oh my goodness, that got that much room to play with. All right, let's do 2. So, like I said, you can hand file these if you want to, and they will, will take the shape of the file. So this is going to give us more of a diamond cut. Use the round one, you'll end up with these weird round cuts, and you do have to fix those somehow, because that kind of U shape you will end up with is not very good or conducive for the key riding up and down. And if you manage to get it in and working, chances are you'll get all the pins to just hang up in the key. So yeah, if you're using a round file to do some of it, just realize at some point in the process you are going to have to stop and correct. Let's call them the bitting angles, I guess. So you can see, we can do it. Hand file takes a little bit of time. Let's come in with a jewelry file just so you can see the effect it has. We'll use one of these round ones. Sometimes you end up, if you're doing this by hand, sometimes it's nice just to switch files, just for the sake of something different during the process, because it will get tedious. So yeah, these jewelry files we can go back and forth with. This is also a round one, so you'll see at least you'll start to probably see the effect I'm talking about. But yeah, that one's did not round it off that much there, but you can get the gist of what it is doing. Where do we put our core at? That's our progress. Not a whole lot. We do need to bring 2 down some more. We will stick with hand filing our 2. We'll use this round one here. You also have to be careful when you're hand filing, because you will have a tendency to put different amounts of pressure on different portions of the lock or the key, and it is possible to end up with like one side of the key up a little bit higher than the other side, and if the pin ends up sitting unevenly there, you do have some tolerance on that pin. It can wiggle it left and right, and that can result in some snagging or just it not kind of working quite right unless you jiggle the key around some. So yeah, hand filing, you gotta be a little more careful keeping that pressure good and even, and we're keeping it all nice and even and flat on the key. I probably actually have an example around here of what happens when you completely bungle it. So this key does work. This is for a different lock. I just wanted to show you. You can see the difference in there. Move this lamp, maybe I can get some of the glare off of it for you. But so you can see how it's kind of uneven, a little bit lumpy in those cuts. Where here we're definitely sitting with a lot more flatter, even cuts, and it's also thinned the key out in a few places, and that's because I found that I was not using even pressure, and so I would end up having to run the file kind of up in that direction, and that was actually thinning it out, and that ends up causing some issues when you put the key in. In this case it does still work, but you're thinning that key out, and so you're risking that key sitting on what is essentially a bit of a bevel sometimes, or that key pin. So, but again, the tolerances are usually sloppy enough in a lot of these locks that you don't have to overly worry about it. Yeah, the very first key I ever cut, I did with only jewelry files. And then Fast Charlie, he showed me, he did a couple videos on how to better cut keys. There's an awesome little tutorial he did. He pretty much did it because he saw me complaining about key cutting. And I guess now I am passing on to you. Fast Charlie made some really cool keys. Do you know if that one's gonna fit? I think that one might. I think that's a little too much. If that one, if 4 is tight, yeah. So 2 is pushing our limit on what our tolerances for the easy set will accept. We'll have to come down a little bit more on it. Okay, I just finished it off camera with the Dremel. Didn't take long at all. And so we put it in here and we give it some turns. I'm using different amounts of pressure, and I'm kind of moving up on the key some and down on the key some. And I see if I'm pushing up on the key, it is snagging, and that's probably because it's 3 is so close. It's probably causing it to hang up. If we just do a nice even, barely any pressure on it turn, we pretty much have it going. So we can take a little bit more off of the key if we wanted to try to clean that up some. I am worried about chamber 1, so we're going to check it. Normally I don't do this, but we are going to load up just chamber 1, put the lock in, and see what happens, just to make sure we're not getting any snagging or anything like that going on. Okay, so we have all our key pins in, but the only driver and spring we have loaded is in chamber 1. And yeah, it's looking like it's gonna be fine. We're not getting any real hang up. The little bit we are getting is that bit I was talking about with depending on how we pressure the key. So we are good. I think we can safely say we can load up the rest of these chambers and see where we get. So we're not going to do it in this case, but I will point out one thing you can do, obviously, is test each, especially if it's one of your first challenge locks, and you're particularly concerned, test one chamber at a time. Yes, it's going to be tedious. It'll give you a lot of experience pinning and repinning a lock. Sorry, I don't know if I can actually get this pin in on camera. But it's a good way to spot problems ahead of time. So you load up pin 5, put your core in, test turn it like we just kind of did with the first pin there. If it's all good, then go ahead and move on to the 4th one, or even take 5 out, put in just 4. Test it, take out 4, put in just 3. It's if you're doing something really goofy, tricky, or you got some questions on a few pins, or you're really new to it, it's probably not a bad idea to do it that way. I am not expecting this lock to work perfectly out of the gate, but I've already kind of in my head thinking about where the problem children are. So I'm just going to go ahead and straight load the whole thing and then give it a test. Okay, so here we are in a bit of the moment of truth. I have not capped the back of this off yet. And remember, when you do this, you have not capped the back of this off yet. So when you go to take the key out, make sure you are holding the core in there with your finger. Otherwise, you risk pulling this entire thing out and throwing your pins everywhere. And then you're going to be on the floor. And we're not going to do a tutorial on crawling on the floor looking for... Should we do a tutorial on how to look for pins? There's an interesting one. Okay, let's see what we've got. I think we're going to be... Hey, we are pretty good. we have just that little tiny occasional snag, but it's running pretty good. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure I'm holding the core there, get the key out, and we can put our back on. And guess what, everybody? That's it. We're done. Done. Okay, everyone, I know this video is now probably the longest one in the whole series, and I apologize for that. Just the way it happened. Yeah, we're still good. So yeah, I'll make it very brief. I'll just tell you all, yeah, thanks for watching. I hope that's been a help, and have a good one. I will see you next time.